Hi, this video is going to be a collaboration with the House of Hauntology channel. If you're looking for macabre, horrifying, disturbing content to use in your RPG sessions, especially if you like to play solo role-playing games, definitely check out his channel. This time I am going to talk about how well does alchemy translate into tabletop role-playing games. I'm going to put a link to the House of Hauntology's video. As soon as it's up, he's going to give his own thoughts, opinions, tips and advice, etc. concerning using alchemy in tabletop role-playing games. So please check out his video. It's going to be very interesting to see if our points are going to support each other. Like, for example, when we talked about cosmic horror, we had almost well, it's not like exactly the same approach, but it seems like our points supported each other. But maybe in this case, we're going to take a look at things from a different angle, perhaps. Who knows? I think I'm going to create a playlist of my collaborations with the House of Hauntology. The link to that playlist will be in the description. So if you missed that video about cosmic horror, it's going to be there. Okay, so like I said, in this case, it's about how well does alchemy apply or is translated to tabletop role-playing games. Oh, before I forget, I also made a video about alchemy and RPGs last October, if I remember correctly. The link will also be in the description. Let's talk a bit about the background of alchemy. Maybe there are some people that have a slight notion of what alchemy is, but they are not exactly sure if it actually exists or not, if it's all about fiction, etc. Some of the things that I'm going to mention in this video can only be verified by someone who has actually attempted alchemy or that has enjoyed the fruits of alchemy's labor. So if you are not very knowledgeable about alchemy or you don't think it's possible or whatever, you could take this video as fictional content, just fiction that you could use in your tabletop RPGs. Alchemy is all about raising vibrations. That's like the textbook definition, you could put it like that. But yet it's about it's about using all the things that you encounter in nature and put them to the highest, most virtuous use. Taking that into consideration, you can see that many populations, cultures, ethnicities have, to a certain degree, they have experimented with alchemy. Alchemy itself, it is said that it came from Egypt. It went from Egypt to Persia, and that's why it's called alchemy, because the Greeks used to call Egypt Gem, which is the Black Land. And then when that art moved to, rather the art and science that is alchemy, when it moved to Persia, they added that prefix of al. So you could call it the art and science of the Black Land. But as I mentioned earlier, different people all over the world have found ways to take things that they encounter in nature, such as plants, crystals, rocks, metals, and they have modified them in different ways to achieve wonderful or wondrous results. Now you could be thinking, if alchemy is so amazing, what happened to it? Why is it so rare nowadays, and why did chemistry replace alchemy? Well, it's mainly because of some fundamental reasons. When it comes to chemistry, when alchemy, you could say that alchemy came first. And there were these people that were interested in learning alchemy. They became known as the puffers. They were called like that because they were constantly using these puffing instruments, those that you are constantly like activating like this, and they go like to blow some air into an experiment, control the temperature and such. That is in the Middle Ages, the Renaissance. So these puffers, they wanted to get into alchemy. They went under the apprenticeship of different alchemists, but oftentimes they didn't have what was needed, and we will talk about that in a few moments, to get into alchemy, but they learned the more superficial aspects of alchemy. This became chemistry. And what do I mean by superficial? It's that certain techniques, methods, results, they are just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what you can accomplish using the different methods of alchemy, their ingredients and such. So chemistry is basically a modified version of alchemy that anyone can use regardless of other things. That is, if you take Bob, Joe, and Johnny, Bob, Joe, and any typical guy, and you tell them how to do something, how to create a certain composite, some sort of substance, how to produce it. As long as they follow the guidelines, they are meticulous and precise in their process, in their methods, they're going to achieve the same result. There is no question about it. You could be saying like, oh, add this number of drops of this, and then mix in this a bit of salt, and then add this other thing, and they're going to create something. And there is no error. It's quite precise, quite scientific. But when it comes to alchemy, it's truly a combination of science, art, and philosophy. If you are lacking in any of those aspects, philosophy could also be understood as spirituality. If you lack any of those aspects, you won't obtain the results. If you dig deeper into the lore of alchemy, you will see that even the most famous proponents of alchemy, that is, people that have a certain fame or renown within occult circles, and many are quite known throughout history, like Paracelsus, Conrad Dippel, Isaac Newton. Many people do not know this, but he was first and foremost an alchemist. I actually do not like him. He belonged to the world mafia that is currently plaguing the world with so many bad things, the Freemasons and such. Those people that think that they should enslave people, that only a few have the right to exist as humans, and they treat everyone else like slaves or cattle. So that's why I don't like Isaac Newton. He actually died when he was searching for the Philosopher's Stone. It is said that he was poisoned by mercury. But moving on from that, those alchemists, they were pursuing a certain unification, like I said, of art, science, and philosophy. And if you lack in any of these areas, you won't obtain the needed results. And you can see that many of those people, they weren't exactly ideal when it comes to their bodies and their minds. So in a certain way, you could say that they failed at that, but they succeeded at transmitting the knowledge. Paracelsus is actually quite interesting. Some of you that have watched the anime Full Metal Alchemist, the father of the main character, he's supposed to be Paracelsus, or he was inspired rather in this figure. But the real Paracelsus, he was quite the man. He used to attack streamline the popular medical knowledge, and he used to create, enact these wonderful cures. He was able to treat almost anything, if perhaps even everything, but he always had this problem with alcohol. He was a drunk. So he was not applying that knowledge to himself. You could say that he failed at that, But because of his alchemical knowledge, he also kept his problems, his health problems, under control. So I find it very suspicious that he died. He was probably killed by one of his medical rivals. In alchemy, many things are hidden behind codes and symbols. If you noticed my community post, I'm going to put a link to it in the description. You can see the typical image usually attributed to Saint George fighting against the dragon. That is actually an image with alchemical secrets. The knight represents the alchemist. The dragon that he is fighting represents a very toxic but crucial, necessary substance that you need to employ when pursuing the Philosopher's Stone. It is such a deadly ingredient that it has damaged or killed many alchemists that were not successful in their fight against the dragon, so to speak. There's a lot of symbology, as you can see. And in many of those pictures, in those images, even in the image that I used, you can see behind the damsel, usually a princess or a queen, the damsel in distress, that the knight is going to claim as his prize, because it's a symbology of the Philosopher's Stone. That is the princess, the damsel represents the Philosopher's Stone. So, taking that into consideration, alchemy is supposed to allow you to experiment with different substances. In the highest, most difficult workings, you're going to be working with the deadliest substances. If you manage to defeat that dragon that represents those dangers, then you will get the hand of the maiden. And that's where many alchemists have failed. Some of the most recent and famous alchemists, they ended up, I don't know if I should say their names, because it could be considered a direct criticism to people that are no longer with us, but perhaps they have friends and family. So I am more interested in criticizing people like that as a whole rather than targeting specific individuals when it comes to alchemy, because despite all of that, they still made a contribution in passing down the techniques, even though they were quite incompetent when using those techniques. So you're going to find alchemists that suffered all sorts of health problems. They didn't manage to heal themselves, and they died of cancer, of lung problems, yes, all sorts of chronic conditions. They weren't successful in using those miraculous cures. So that's nonsensical. This means that they lacked that spiritual quality. They knew the process, they used the materials, but they couldn't produce the result of the working of the operation. Some of them were quite psychotic, I would say, or perhaps sociopathic, because they would take their students and put their students to work on processes that they themselves were not capable of doing, endangering the lives of their students. It's like Aristotle told Alexander the Great. He said, you cannot ask of your men something that you are not capable of doing yourself. There are so many people like that in our current times. Those vain and superficial villains that are asking of others what they themselves cannot do and will not do. So that's an error on the part of those alchemists. They weren't truly alchemists. They were aspiring alchemists because they didn't heal their bodies, their minds with their alchemical substances, and they endangered the lives of others. They should have set the example. But in their own way, in their own campuses, in their places of study, because there were actually alchemical schools. There are still some schools in different parts of the world, but they are quite secret. because of the failings of the past, and we will get into that in a few moments, and I will tell you how to connect that to role-playing games. Because of failings that have been seen in those alchemical schools, they decided to keep their groups a bit more reduced. Only perhaps 12 or 7 students. That way they can pay closer attention to the process and to the safety of all of the students. Many of the people that are still disseminating, spreading this alchemical knowledge, they were students of the other of those failed alchemists that I mentioned. So when it comes to the failings of spreading the processes and knowledge and true science and art of alchemy, it's related to several things, but you could say that it's mostly related to a superficial mindset and a lack of spiritual development. In current times, because of social engineering by the part of many tyrants in the world, typical bankers, what you would call, let's say, it's somewhat of a delicate subject, but let's call them fake Jews. People that are not truly Jewish, they are not seeking for virtue, they are not grateful to other people and to God, but they are rather they're kind of like Satanists. They're seeking the destruction, they're putting the lives of humans in the palm of the devil's hand, so to speak. Because of them, they have cultivated this superficial mindset in people. By the way, if this video is taken down, remember to check out my backup channel in Odysee. The video will be there. The link will be in the description. So yes, there is a superficial mindset and search for immediate gratification or results that simply are incompatible. Those things, those vices are incompatible with alchemy. Alchemy takes a long time. So if you take two people, Joe and Jack, and let's say that Jack is well developed spiritually and he's not superficial or vain and he takes his time, etc. And you have Joe, and Joe he's a materialist. He has this materialistic mindset. He has the mindset of a chemist. And they carry out the same alchemical process together. Jack is going to succeed because of his spiritual development. You could say that his ethereal body, his aura, his vibration, his energy influences the substances that he is working with. But Joe, because he hasn't exercised that hidden muscle, to put it that way, in his own being, he is not capable of adding that crucial ingredient. So Jack will succeed in creating those tinctures, those stones, and those elixirs, and Joe is going to fail. Now let's go into role-playing games for a moment. I think that in role-playing games, alchemy has been implemented quite well in its more superficial aspects. Now this could be considered like a harsh criticism or a derogatory way of putting things, but that's actually great. Even the surface, even the tip of the iceberg of alchemy, it has these results that you can use in role-playing games, the healing potions, anything that could be considered like fantasy chemistry in RPGs, that's alchemy. You even have alchemist classes, but they are still very superficial in my opinion. It's usually a character that has some sort of advantage or ease when creating different substances, potions, stones, powders, etc. And they usually use these alchemical products as bombs, or in some other ways, perhaps to enhance their own bodies. Yes, that's true, but we will get deeper into how you can use alchemy in tabletop role-playing games. By the way, the House of Hauntology also commented that he's going to give some tips on how to implement alchemy. So definitely check out his video. We'll talk about what I think is lacking in tabletop role-playing games in a few moments when it comes to alchemy. But suffice to say, when it comes to using the beneficial effects of alchemy, the liquids, the substances, the materials, it has been handled quite well. Just for example, behind me you have the Arcanum role-playing game. In that role-playing game you have an entire section dedicated to alchemy, and you have all of the tools, the fantasy processes, and it makes you feel as if you're actually undertaking some sort of occult science. But just give me a few moments and I will tell you how that could be integrated even more in a stronger way in role-playing games. Perhaps you could even create a role-playing game based completely on alchemy, because alchemy in RPGs is usually handled as just an aspect of it. The Legend Quest role-playing game that I am reviewing, I'm going to put a link in the description, they also handle alchemy there. Quite, if not complex, pretty in-depth. Like in Arcanum, Arcanum is actually, in its execution, it is a rules-light RPG. But it goes quite deep when it comes to the subsystems. And the alchemical subsystems there, they are great. You actually feel like an alchemist in that surface level play. Going back to real alchemy. Many of you are actually already alchemists and you haven't realized it yet. For example, maybe some of you know the properties of different herbs. You know how to make teas. Teas. So making a tea is quite simple. You take a cup of drinkable water, you heat it up until it boils, and then you add a small, well, I don't know how you say it in Spanish, we call it cucharadita. Is it tablespoon? I think it's tablespoon, right? Hopefully. Well, the smaller spoon, you use a small spoon of the herb that you are working with. And after 5 minutes, you turn the heat off. That is, after boiling the water for 5 minutes, you turn it off, the heat, and you let it rest for 10 minutes. And then you drink it, and voila, you obtain some miraculous cures. Pharma and doctors and hospitals, they don't like it when people becomes aware of this. You should read the book Five Chimneys so you can see just a glimpse on how in the past, in different hospitals and clinics, they actually used natural cures that anyone could prepare. But a certain corrupt family, Rockefeller, they are the owners of oil and petroleum. So obviously they want to enslave people by selling lots and lots of products that are derived from oil and petroleum. So they started to send agents to hospitals and clinics. They started to sabotage those tinctures, those teas, those cures, and replace them with these pills and capsules and all sorts of syrups that harm the body. They eliminate the symptoms but not the cause. They are like anesthesia. So suddenly you are, oh, my stomach hurts. Oh, don't worry, take your Pepto-Bismol. And that doesn't cure the problem. It calms down your pain, but the pathogen that is still causing the damage, it's still there. And that's why there are so many people with all sorts of chronic problems, because of all of those medicines that put the pain to sleep, but the pathogen is still killing your digestive system, maybe you have respiratory issues or something related to your skin. You know how there are people with all of those, how you say, like zits and pimples and things all over the face, and they don't know how to treat them, and suddenly someone, oh, try this chemical cure approved by Food and Drug, just put it on your face and it will go away. But the real problem that is causing all of those ugly zits, warts, things that are sprouting all over your face or body, perhaps. It's basically a way of your body trying to purify itself from something really toxic that is harming it from the inside. So all of those creams are just, it's like putting a sheet over the problem or a blanket over the problem. Your body is still suffering and is desperately trying to purify itself from some disease. That's why in those horrible diseases, you see people with all sorts of blisters and disgusting things all over their skin because the body is so damaged that it's trying to expel all of those things through the pores of the body. So alchemists are aware of this. And like I said, if you have ever created like a tea or you have taken any natural substance, herb, food, and you have applied something to it, some heat, or combined it in some way, you are elevating its vibration and you are reaping the benefits from it. It is said that in alchemy, the most dangerous poisons hide the most miraculous cures. Let's take an example. Well, this is a mild example. Oregano. Many of you have enjoyed oregano with your Italian food, perhaps, but few of you know that oregano is actually one of the best, perhaps the best, I would say, the best things that you can use to treat amoebas, to kill amoebas. Amoebiasis, do you call it in English, I think? When someone has digestive problems related to amoebas, you take a cup of oregano tea once a day for 3 days. The problem is gone. But oregano itself can be very harmful if taken in large doses. So if you take like a big chunk of oregano, like three spoonfuls, and you eat it, it's going to destroy your digestive system. It's too irritating. But in small quantities and heated up as a tea, like I said, the smallest spoon, the tablespoon, or yes, I'm going to call it little spoon because I am forgetting how you call it in English. But if you put the little spoon on the tea of oregano, it's going to work wonders, and it has no sequels, those that are caused by all of those pharmaceutical toxic products. So that's alchemy. But you can take things even higher still, because those teas can be employed by anyone without that spiritual component. If you take the average guy and you tell him how to prepare this tea, he will be able to do it without error as long as he follows the process. But what about those higher processes where you take a plant, you separate that plant in 3 essential components: the salt, which is the body of the plant, the sulfur, which would be the oil, and the mercury, which is a volatile substance that is obtained further into the process, usually after digestion. It's a part of the process. The interesting thing about alchemy is that it mimics the processes within the human body. The human body itself is a perfect alchemical machine. As long as you are not putting toxic substances into your body, no, I cannot say it here in YouTube because they will surely take down the video, but you know that thing that they are trying to get into people, or those capsules and pills, the body, as long as you treat it with natural food, the right herbs, etc., the body is capable of such miraculous things. And digestion is truly a miraculous process where you take natural, healthy food and you turn it into muscle, into your beautiful hair. Well, I'm working on my hair, okay? I'm always I have this scruffy hair, but at least, for example, I'm not bald, and many people have lost their their hair because of those products. Sometimes it affects the skin, the eyesight. They rapidly age as well, and like I said, they have problems when it comes to breathing, digestion, etc. So in alchemy, you take those 3 separate essentials, you purify them separately, and then you join them together. You join them into a perfect solution, a perfect version of what the, let's say that you're working with herbs. What the herb was supposed to be, it is now in its highest expression. It has become to a certain degree divine. And if you take a bit of that herb, you obtain so many wonderful things that were not even capable of being obtained by, for example, using it in a tea. And there are other more risky processes, or that you have to be really careful. At the lowest expression, working with metals, there is colloidal silver, colloidal gold. They are each used for different things. For example, colloidal silver is a great antibacterial, antimicrobial, and antifungal product of alchemy. You basically pass electric current through silver into water that you can drink, and used in controlled doses, you can heal yourself of many things. I remember the Shields from Pharma a few years back. They had this guy he basically painted his entire skin blue to say that's what happens to you when you take colloidal silver, which is quite laughable. Anyone that has taken colloidal silver, including me, knows that's impossible. But you need to know how to take it when you have some issues related to some bacteria or some fungi. There are many different types of fungi. The silver only treats certain, how many fungi were there? Like 108 different sorts. Well, of the harmful ones, there are many, and it treats a great quantity of them, but not all of them. The other fungi are treated by using horsetail or garlic. But sticking back to metals, colloidal silver, let's say that someone is feeling too bad, he doesn't know what is wrong, and he takes, again, the little spoon, you put it under your tongue, you let the colloidal silver, which is diluted in water, it has to be properly prepared, you let it there for 40 seconds, and then you swallow it, and now it's in your bloodstream, healing your body. And in 3 days, by taking 4 little spoons a day during 3 days, your body is healed. And when it comes to gold, it reinvigorates, it rejuvenates and reinvigorates your body, taken in the appropriate doses. So that's how you work with. You can work with metals, but in alchemy, things take an even more interesting turn or twist. What if you were to combine metal with plant? And they are the tyrants of the world, pharma, etc. They are doing that to hurt people using a sort of dark alchemy, if you could call it like that, by combining metal, or rather semi-metal, a semi-metal with something. Yes, you know, I hope this video isn't taken down, but remember, it's in an Odysee. You know what I mean, exactly what I mean. And remember, those of us that haven't taken that, we are not sick. Those that take that, they have died. It was 3.5 million people dying in the US, perhaps, since that thing started. They try to keep those numbers pretty low. I don't remember if it was in the US or in America, in the entire continent, but there have been many casualties. And many people that are sick. In Odysee, just take a look, do your research on that thing in Odysee, search like the name of that thing and death and all side effects and all that, and you will see some really horrible videos and testimonies. It's a dark alchemy where the combination of metal, but they combined metal with, let's say, a human component. I'm going to put a link in the description to a very interesting video. I recommend that you watch it. It is imperative that you watch it. It's in Odysee, so you can see what those things actually contain. But going back to the positive side of alchemy, what if you were able to combine metal with plant? Then you are undertaking the path of the philosopher's stone. The philosopher's stone is the result of combining partly, well, yes, the mineral realm with the realm of plants. And there are many other variations in alchemy. The more risky alchemy, I would say, and perhaps unethical in some cases, would be combining the animal realm with metal or plant. There are some safe and ethical ways to do it. For example, there's a bit of a divide with alchemy. Some so-called alchemists say that alchemy is all about lab work. There is no spiritual component to it. And some others say alchemy is just about meditation and visualization, and there is no material component to it. But I would say that you have to combine both. And in the case of the meditation process known as sun gazing, which is not like looking at the sun directly when it's at its highest, when the UV index is at its highest, don't do that. That's dangerous for the eyes. It's a very meticulous and a method. You have to be very patient with it. Looking in a controlled way, we are talking about a matter of seconds when the UV index is at its lowest. When sun rises and the sun goes down, there is a moment where the UV index is at its lowest, and in a very controlled way, we're talking about seconds. Then you carry out sun gazing. You could say that that's a way of working with the animal realm, your own body. You're obtaining energy from the sun by walking barefoot. You are obtaining minerals from the earth. You are breathing air. You are drinking healthy, pure water. So you are combining all of those realms together. In that way, that's an ethical way of working human alchemy, so to speak. The Wim Hof Method. Many of you have heard of it. It's incredibly famous. You can withstand all sorts of temperatures, extreme cold, extreme heat. You become, Wim Hof himself has said it, although there are some things that I don't like about Wim Hof. But we must put credit where credit is due. He has done a great job in popularizing those methods. That method that is actually a combination or a more easy to process version of Tibetan breathing methods that is from the East. He said that you become an alchemist of your own body by controlling your breathing, the substances, the biochemical functions in your body, and that's how you can withstand extreme cold, extreme heat. I haven't, a lot of you already know this, and just to give you an example, I haven't taken a hot shower in about 10 years or so. Only cold water, even in winter. So, by employing all of that alchemical knowledge, the alchemist transforms himself. Now, let's go into how you can use this in role-playing games. Now that we have all of that background, that theory, and, well, you could say potential practice that has been explained, in role-playing games, it would be great if there was a role-playing game completely focused on alchemy. Even though it wouldn't be exactly realistic, you could have different character classes or archetypes to represent the different things about alchemy. For example, you could have like an alchemist that, because of the tinctures and stones that he or she prepares when he or she consumes the substances, maybe his body becomes very strong and he's like the tank of the group. Maybe there is another alchemist by preparing different substances and consuming those substances. Now he has awakened his psychic powers and he could be like the caster of the group. So you could play around with those archetypes and classes. That would be a good way of handling alchemy. But even in role-playing games that are not focused on alchemy, you can insert the alchemist's quest, the alchemist's journey. It's very curious because many esoteric different disciplines, or just disciplines, it feels like there are some entities overseeing your entire learning process. Those of you that have practiced martial arts have probably known about the warrior's journey, the, how do you call it in Japanese? The Musha Shugyo, if I'm not mistaken. And this also happens when you are learning like ceremonial magic. When you undertake anything, ceremonial magic, martial arts, alchemy, as long as you are serious about it, suddenly, mysteriously, life starts to put all of the resources at your disposal. You could be thinking, oh, I want to practice alchemy, but I don't have access to these substances because they are illegal in my country, or you can only purchase a small quantity of them, or it's illegal to subject them or submit them to certain processes, and I don't know where I can obtain those things. And suddenly you realize that you are living near a place where that thing is in abundance in nature, but you still have to put the work into extracting those things. Or maybe you could be thinking, oh, I don't know someone who can teach me this or that, and suddenly you become aware of a certain school or certain individuals that they teach you this. So I think that you could work this into an entire campaign. Maybe the characters start out by hearing about this magical item or potion or stone or whatever that you can only obtain through alchemical processes. Maybe it's a sort of like a philosopher's stone that grants you immortality or perfect health or whatever. But you don't know how to obtain it, and suddenly someone barges into the tavern or the headquarters or the house of one of the player characters, and he has this map and tells them, you must go to this place in my stead. I tried to find out the truth about this or that, but I got wounded and now I'm about to die. And he dies and he leaves the map, and now the characters have to figure out what's at the bottom of that chamber or dungeon or in that abandoned castle. Perhaps you could make it in a sort of like Conrad Dippel situation. You should definitely check out the there are probably some documentaries here in YouTube about Conrad Dippel, which was also an alchemist, a very creepy alchemist in my opinion. He is the true one of the sources, you could say, of inspiration for Dr. Frankenstein. Remember, it's Conrad Dippel with a K and Dippel. Sorry, Dippel. Conrad Dippel. If you can't find information about him, let me know so I can write you the correct name in the comments or whatever. But yes, then the characters start out their journey into that alchemical process. Maybe they get to the bottom of a dungeon or inside of a castle or whatever, and they find some other documents. You could even play around with some documents from real life, like the Voynich manuscript, and maybe they start to decipher the keys within it. Maybe any of those Kabbalistic texts. And oh, this is actually part of an alchemical process and a journey. For example, maybe a lot of you, because of Harry Potter, have heard about Nicolas Flamel. He is one of the people that supposedly discovered through his work, he discovered the alchemical, the philosopher's stone. And there are rumors that, oh, he's still alive somewhere because he became immortal. But some others say that his story, his journey, is actually a set of codes that describe the way of creating the philosopher's stone in the best, easiest way, safest way possible, potentially. Because the most known process about for creating the philosopher's stone, it takes 22 years to create it. And if anything goes wrong in that process, the whole thing is interrupted. So imagine spending 22 years of your life creating the Philosopher's Stone. Something goes wrong, perhaps you are 21 years into the process and now it's all ruined. And you also need a bit of money. You would need like a million, between 1 million to $2 million for the entire process, using the more popular, so to speak, method. But supposedly the legend of Nicolas Flamel and all of that, it hides some shortcuts and some cheaper ways to undertake that process. Truly a titanic labor, in my opinion. So you could work such a process into your role-playing games of the characters finding out different drawings, those weird drawings that you see a lion with the head of a human, and you see a woman and a guy, and you see a dragon, and suddenly it's raining like blood or something, and they are all codes that the characters have to decipher. You can work all of that into a campaign or several campaigns if you are trying to create different alchemical workings, yes, or products rather. So I think that's still quite lacking in many role-playing games. In the case of Arcanum, like I said, I like the way that alchemy is used as a sort of technology. Remember, technology is the application of science, so let's call it a technology. But when it comes to that alchemical journey, not much emphasis is put into that. There are glimpses of it because of the difficulty and the rarity of some of the ingredients, but things are usually simplified or streamlined so that the role-playing game doesn't put too much focus on alchemy. After all, in the case of Arcanum, you also have many other things related to magic and fighting and journeys, etc. Journeys not related to alchemy. So, in my opinion, when it comes to the implementation of different character classes, the potions, alchemist tools and kits and all of that in role-playing games, that has been handled well. But the alchemical journey itself and the transformation upon the player characters' bodies, there is still so much room for improvement in that regard. And remember, alchemy is always going to have a positive effect on your body. If there is an alchemist that is suffering from all sorts of horrible illnesses and he has a body that is, well, if there is no other way to put it, pathetic when compared to the higher version of yourself that you could be, that alchemist still has certain things that could be improved, or perhaps that alchemist has failed in the process. So a player character that is focusing on alchemy, he should be improving so much throughout the course of his or her career as he or she levels up to the point that he or she may end up becoming some sort of semi-divine being, like a demigod perhaps, or in more over-the-top settings, perhaps even a god. So, well, I hope all of this information serves as some sort of inspiration for your tabletop RPGs. You could use this in the more mechanical side of things with those potions and tinctures, or even more rudimentary things, like I said, such as teas. But if you want to implement this into an entire campaign, or homebrew or modify your RPGs so that all of the characters involved are alchemists, then definitely go ahead and do it. I think alchemy is not only a source of inspiration, and perhaps it could have some advantages to your real life if you decide to undertake that path. But when it comes to role-playing games, it's going to be very fun to undertake those quests, those journeys that seem mysteriously guided by some sort of force or entity as you discover those ingredients, substances, processes, techniques, tools. Perhaps there is a place that you have to be to carry out the final step to create something miraculous. in real Miraculous, sorry, in real world alchemy, there are places in the world where only certain processes can be undertaken. That's why certain alchemists fail when trying to create this, and oh, it didn't work, I followed everything every step of the way, but they miss the exact location to carry out that because of the energy of the earth. And some ingredients can only be obtained in certain parts of the world. That could also be worked into a campaign, no matter if you are running a fantasy game or a sci-fi game or a modern game, steampunk, horror, whatever. You can insert that journey into any setting. So thank you for watching this video. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. I would also like to know about your thoughts when it comes to implementing alchemy in tabletop role-playing games. And definitely check out the House of Hauntology's video about alchemy. And thank you so much to those of you that have been supporting the channel by sending right through RPG gift certificates. If anyone else wants to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Well, before we finish this video, I think that it will also be a good idea for people to comment topics or subjects for the House of Hauntology and me to collaborate upon. It's better if they are like mysterious occult topics, because that way I think it works with the theme of the House of Hauntology channel and with those videos that I sometimes upload every now and then. So if you have like a mysterious topic and how you would implement that subject or topic into role-playing games, definitely let us know. Maybe we'll make a collaboration in the near future about that topic or subject. So once again, thank you and see you later.